The Unity Station hung like a jewel above the blue and white swirl of the planet Aurelia. Its gleaming towers and sprawling domes reflected the distant starlight, casting a warm glow across the orbiting city. Tonight, the station was alive with excitement. Across its many halls, beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors hurried to the grand ballroom, where the annual Unity Ball was about to begin. It was the most important event of the interstellar calendar, a night when alliances were formed, rivalries softened, and leaders showed their strength not just in power, but in how they connected with others. Inside the main hall, the walls shimmered with crystal panels that displayed distant galaxies, nebulae, and swirling asteroid fields. The floor was polished to a mirror-like shine, reflecting the colorful lights that danced across the ceiling. Music floated through the air soft at first, then swelling into the rhythms of alien instruments that no human had ever heard before. Every corner of the room buzzed with conversation, laughter, and whispers. Among the hundreds of beings gathered, every alien seemed to have found their partner for the evening. Some held hands, others linked arms, and a few simply floated beside each other, their gestures silent but full of meaning. Bright-eyed young diplomats, seasoned warriors, and charismatic leaders all moved together in pairs, their confidence radiating like tiny suns. But at the far end of the ballroom, seated on a slightly elevated platform, was one figure who did not have a companion. She was the alien vampire queen, Morvessa. Her presence alone commanded attention. Standing at over 7 feet tall, with pale skin that shimmered faintly like moonlight and eyes that glowed crimson in the dim light, she exuded a mix of elegance and danger. Her long, silver-black hair flowed over her shoulders, and her high-collared gown shimmered with patterns that seemed to move like living shadows. Most beings felt a shiver of awe or fear when they looked at her, and most avoided approaching. Morvessa, however, did not seem concerned. She watched the swirling crowd with quiet detachment, one hand resting lightly on her chair's armrest. Her sharp gaze swept over each pair, noting how effortlessly they had found each other. Diplomats whispered compliments, warriors nodded in approval, and leaders exchanged smiles of understanding. Everyone had a partner but not her. A faint sigh escaped her lips. So predictable, she thought, so easily paired, so eager to belong, and yet, here I am, alone. Despite her title and power, she often felt invisible in a way. The other beings respected her from a distance, feared her abilities, but rarely saw her as an individual. They only saw the queen, the strategic genius, the warrior, the symbol of her people's might. No one tried to understand what she liked, what she dreamed of, or what she wanted beyond her throne. Tonight, she felt the weight of that loneliness more than ever. Meanwhile, a human diplomat named Ethan navigated the crowded ballroom with careful steps. Humans were still considered newcomers in many interstellar circles. Though their species had grown rapidly in influence, many aliens still underestimated them. Humans lacked the natural powers or heightened senses common among other species. But they had something different: adaptability, creativity, and the courage to take risks others would avoid. Ethan's dark hair was neatly combed, and his simple suit stood out amidst the extravagant attire of the aliens. He carried no weapons, no exotic gadgets, and yet he moved through the crowd with a quiet confidence. He noticed how other attendees paired off quickly, how alliances formed in seconds with subtle gestures or a word of approval. And then, from across the hall, he noticed her Morvessa. She did not move toward anyone. She did not smile at any of the other attendees. She sat alone, her crimson eyes scanning the room, her posture regal yet relaxed. Ethan felt a flicker of curiosity. Why is she alone? He wondered. Most beings would be drawn to her power, her status, or her aura. Yet she had no partner. That was unusual, and it intrigued him. He adjusted his tie and began walking toward her, carefully weaving through the crowd. As he approached, he could feel the subtle tension in the room. Other attendees shifted slightly, whispering to each other. Many glanced at him with surprise or perhaps disbelief that a human would dare approach the feared alien vampire queen. Ethan paused just before reaching her platform. Morvessa's eyes met his, and for a moment, the room seemed to fall away. Her gaze was intense, not hostile, but probing, as if she were measuring him against some unseen standard. Most beings would have faltered under such scrutiny. Ethan, however, simply nodded respectfully. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm and steady. "May I join you?" For a moment, Morvessa did not speak. Then, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You may," she replied, her voice smooth, like silk sliding over steel. Ethan lowered himself onto the edge of her platform, careful to maintain proper etiquette without bowing too deeply. He knew that in alien cultures, missteps could offend even when intentions were good. But Morvessa simply watched him, silent and composed. "I notice you are alone," Ethan said after a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Most people avoid you, I think. They're intimidated." Morvessa's lips curved into a faint smile. "Intimidation is a choice they make," she said. "Fear, respect, curiosity. All are masks. Most choose fear." Ethan nodded. "I suppose it's easier to follow the mask than to see the person behind it." Her crimson eyes narrowed slightly. "And you see me?" she asked, her tone more curious than accusatory. "I'm trying," he said simply. "I want to understand. Not just who you are as a queen, but who you are beyond the title." For the first time that evening, Morvessa felt a spark of intrigue. Most beings either bowed, flattered, or fled. This human, however, did something different. He acknowledged her power but did not treat her as untouchable. He was not trying to impress her, only to connect. "Few take the time to see me," she admitted softly. "Even fewer approach me without an agenda." Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe that's because most don't dare. But I believe connection isn't about daring. It's about willingness." A silence followed, but it was not uncomfortable. Morvessa studied him, sensing the honesty in his voice, the absence of ulterior motives. She felt something she rarely did: curiosity without caution, interest without calculation. "All right, human," she said finally, a touch of amusement in her voice. "You may stay. But understand this. You are in the company of one who does not suffer fools lightly. I do not intend to be one." Ethan replied. The music in the ballroom swelled, and pairs began to move gracefully across the floor. Some glanced at them, whispering, yet none dared approach the queen. Yet for the first time, Morvessa did not mind being noticed because she had chosen. "Not been chosen? Tell me about your homeworld," she said after a pause. "Humans are unpredictable. I find it fascinating." And so, they began to talk. Not about politics, not about strategy, but about life, ideas, and dreams. Ethan spoke of Earth, its history, and humanity's drive to survive and thrive. Morvessa shared glimpses of her world, its beauty, its struggles, and her role in protecting her people. For the first time, she felt that someone was listening not as a subject, but as an equal. Hours passed, and the Unity Ball continued around them. The music, the laughter, and the dance carried on. Yet Morvessa's focus remained on the human who had dared to reach out. She had spent centuries seeing herself through the eyes of others, feared or admired for her power, but rarely understood. Tonight, someone had chosen to see her dot as the first part of the night drew to a close. Morvessa realized something important. Perhaps this human was not just curious, but brave. Not brave in battle or strength, but brave in heart. And that, she thought quietly, was something even the mightiest beings could admire. Ethan glanced at her, noticing the subtle shift in her expression, the almost imperceptible softening of her gaze. "I think you might enjoy the rest of the night," he said. "I suppose we shall see, human." Morvessa replied, her voice carrying a hint of intrigue and amusement, and for the first time in a long while, the alien vampire queen did not feel alone. The Unity Ball continued long into the night, its grandeur echoing across the starlit halls of the station. Crystal chandeliers floated midair, casting prismatic lights across the polished floors, and the music, an unusual blend of alien instruments and rhythmic vibrations, filled the room with an almost magical energy. Couples danced gracefully, their movements coordinated as if guided by some invisible rhythm of the universe. Morvessa, the alien vampire queen, remained seated on her elevated platform, her crimson eyes, glowing faintly under the hall's light, followed the crowd with a quiet but piercing intensity. Many attendees stole glances at her, then hurried away, uneasy in her presence. And yet, unlike the others, Ethan did not avert his gaze. He stayed close, choosing a spot at a respectful distance where he could observe her without imposing. But more than observation, he wanted to understand. There was something about Morvesa that was both intimidating and fascinating. She was alone, yes, but not lonely in the way one might expect. Her posture, her gaze, her very aura suggested patience, calculation, and curiosity. Ethan spoke first. The music here, it's unlike anything I've ever heard. Does it have meaning beyond entertainment? Morvesa's lips curved into a faint smile. Most music does, she replied, her voice like smooth silver. It communicates emotion, history, even subtle warnings. Some instruments are designed to guide the mind, others to open the heart. Ethan nodded. Then perhaps it can teach me something about your people. She raised an eyebrow. You humans are unusually bold. Most would not speak so freely to the queen. Most humans might not, he admitted. But I'm not most humans. The faint amusement in Morvesa's eyes deepened. Confidence or foolishness? She asked. Perhaps a little of both, Ethan said honestly. I prefer to find out the difference before it's too late. Morvesa's expression softened slightly. This was not the kind of conversation she usually had. Diplomats, warriors, and even other leaders approached her with flattery or caution, all trying to extract something in alliance, loyalty, or information. But Ethan did not. He merely wanted to connect, to understand. Tell me about Earth, she said after a pause. I have read about your species, but the reports are incomplete. I wish to hear it from one who has lived there. Ethan leaned back, thoughtful. Earth is complicated. People are driven by curiosity, fear, hope, and ambition all at once. We fight, we create, we destroy, and yet somehow we survive. We invent not because we have to, but because we imagine possibilities. Morvesa tilted her head slightly, listening intently. Imagination, she repeated. A trait I do not see often among other species. Many are content with order and routine. They fear change. Perhaps they fear the unknown more than change itself, Ethan suggested. But humans, we are willing to face the unknown, sometimes recklessly, sometimes with care. But we move forward. Morvesa considered this. The human's perspective was unusual. Most species valued strength, tradition, or cunning above all else. Humans valued something else: adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to take risks for ideas rather than immediate gain. You may be more interesting than I thought, Morvesa said finally. And you? Ethan replied with a small smile. Maybe more than just a queen who scares everyone into respect. She studied him for a long moment, her crimson eyes glowing faintly in the ambient light. There was no malice in her gaze, only curiosity, tinged with something she rarely allowed herself to feel: intrigue. You speak as though you have already judged me, she said. I judge only what I see, Ethan answered. And what I see is a being who is lonely despite her power, for the first time in centuries. Morvesa allowed herself a small laugh, a soft, melodic sound that echoed through the hall. Lonely, yes, but not helpless. Of course not, Ethan said. Power does not require companionship, but connection. That is different. Even the strongest cannot fully thrive alone. The queen's gaze softened. Few had ever spoken so plainly to her about vulnerability, and fewer still with honesty. She found herself intrigued by this human, whose courage was quiet but unmistakable. Suddenly, a small commotion broke the calm of the ballroom. Several attendants whispered urgently, their faces pale beneath masks of politeness. Morvesa's ears, sensitive to shifts in tone and movement, immediately picked up on the tension. She turned slightly, scanning the crowd. What is happening? Ethan asked, noticing her alertness. Morvesa's crimson eyes narrowed. Trouble. Subtle, but approaching. She rose gracefully from her chair, her gown flowing like liquid shadows. Stay close, human. This may test more than your curiosity, Ethan nodded. Despite his lack of supernatural abilities, he trusted Morvesa's judgment. Her command over the environment was unmatched, and her instincts were sharp. He had learned in their brief conversation that humans had to rely on wit and observation, skills that often went unnoticed by other species. Tonight, those skills would be important. A group of alien dignitaries had gathered in one corner, their whispers frantic. Morvessa's gaze sharpened. "They are plotting something," she said. "Not here, yet close enough to disrupt the event. Their motives, likely personal power." Ethan studied the room, trying to match her perception. Humans had learned to read subtle cues, body language, tone, hesitation, skills that often gave them an edge despite their lack of raw power. "I see them," he said quietly. "They are nervous, but coordinated." "Good," Morvessa murmured. "Observe, do not intervene yet. We need certainty before action." The two of them moved subtly through the crowd, their movements unnoticed by most. Morvessa's presence alone created a buffer. Attendees instinctively avoided her path, clearing space without thought. Ethan followed her, noting how she commanded attention without needing to speak. "They rely too much on fear," Morvessa whispered. "Fear is effective, but it blinds them. We will exploit their arrogance." Ethan nodded. He had seen similar situations on Earth, groups that underestimated the unexpected, believing strength or status guaranteed success. Yet it was often the observant, the adaptable, and the daring who prevailed. The insurgents, though small in number, began to make their move. One attempted to distract the ballroom by tampering with the music system, creating a sudden disruption in the otherwise flawless harmony. A ripple of confusion spread among the dancers. Morvessa's eyes glowed brighter. She moved with elegance and speed, intercepting the instigator before he could reach his intended target. Ethan, using his knowledge of human improvisation, created a distraction by signaling a nearby group of attendants to investigate a minor anomaly. The combination of her power and his subtle manipulation kept the situation contained. The Queen studied him, impressed. Humans lacked inherent physical strength in many cases, but their creativity, courage, and quick thinking allowed them to influence outcomes in ways other species often overlooked. "You are unusual," she said under her breath. "And you are remarkable," Ethan replied. "Few beings command attention so completely, yet none have trapped me with fear." For a moment, the chaos subsided. Morvessa's presence alone ensured that the small insurgent threat could not escalate. Ethan's human ingenuity complemented her strength perfectly, a combination rarely seen across them. Galaxy. The ballroom slowly returned to normal. Couples resumed their dances, music flowed again, and whispers of admiration spread quietly through the crowd. Yet Morvessa remained watchful, her gaze occasionally flicking toward Ethan. She recognized something rare in humans, an ability to face danger calmly and think creatively under pressure. "You may not be powerful like some of the species here," she said softly, "but you are invaluable in ways many overlook." Ethan smiled. "And you, Queen, are more than your reputation suggests. You are not just feared, you are inspiring." Morvessa's crimson eyes held his gaze for a long moment. There was a silent acknowledgement between them, a recognition that the night had revealed more than just surface appearances. Trust had begun to form, built not on fear, flattery, or power, but on courage, respect, and genuine curiosity. As the first light of a distant star filtered through the ballroom's crystal windows, Morvessa returned to her elevated platform. Yet tonight, she felt a small but significant change. She was no longer merely the observer, feared and isolated. She had found someone who saw her not just the queen, but the being behind the title. And for Ethan, the night had shown that humans could hold their own among the galaxy's most powerful beings, not through strength, but through ingenuity, courage, and the simple act of noticing what others ignored. The Unity Ball was far from over, and the night promised more challenges and surprises. But in that moment, the alien vampire queen and the human diplomat shared a quiet understanding. A bond had begun, subtle but undeniable, forged by curiosity and bravery, and perhaps, just perhaps, the start of an alliance unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The first rays of Aurelia's twin suns glimmered faintly. through the towering windows of Unity Station. Inside, the grand ballroom was alive with renewed energy. Guests whispered about the minor disruption the previous night, but no one suspected how close disaster had come. Morvessa, the alien vampire queen, remained vigilant. Her crimson eyes scanned the crowd, noting every subtle shift in behavior. She had survived centuries through intelligence, observation, and power, but tonight was different. She sensed a new challenge brewing, one that could test not only her abilities, but those of the unexpected human who had earned her attention. Ethan stood beside her, calm and observant. He had spent hours learning the subtle signs of unrest among the alien guests' nervous gestures, hesitant glances, and minor strategic positioning that spoke of coordination beyond casual movement. Morvessa noticed how his human intuition worked, how he pieced together small details into a larger picture. He lacked her supernatural strength, but his mind worked in ways that complemented her instincts perfectly. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed, and an authoritative voice echoed across the halls. Intruders detected. Security breach imminent. Evacuate if possible. Panic rippled through the ballroom. Beings who had paired off so elegantly just moments ago now froze or bolted for exits. Some attempted to hide, others drew weapons. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by the harsh tones of emergency sirens. Morvessa's expression hardened. "They are coming," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "Not for negotiation, but for chaos." Ethan looked around, assessing the situation. "Do we know their numbers or intentions?" She shook her head slightly. "Not yet, but I can feel their intent. They seek to disrupt the unity of the galaxy, to fracture alliances through fear. We must act before they gain the upper hand." With a swift movement, Morvessa rose to her full height. Her presence alone cleared the immediate space around her, creating a bubble of control amid the chaos. Ethan followed closely, noting how other diplomats and warriors instinctively deferred to her authority. Humans lack such innate influence, but observation and decisiveness often achieve the same effect. They moved toward the source of the alarm, the central control hub of the station. The hallway was filled with smoke from small, engineered explosions meant to distract and intimidate. Most beings panicked, retreating in every direction. Ethan stayed close to Morvessa, guiding panicked guests toward safety. "Stay calm. Follow her lead," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Morvessa's crimson eyes scanned the approaching threat. A group of insurgents had infiltrated the station, moving with precision but overconfidence. They assumed their numbers and weapons would intimidate the defenders. They had underestimated one crucial element: the humans. Ethan's calm, fearless coordination allowed Morvessa to focus on strategy rather than distraction. "Human," she called over the din, her voice steady. "I will need you to think quickly. They will attempt to flank the main control panel. Can you guide me?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, follow my directions, and we'll outmaneuver them." As the insurgents reached the control hub, Morvessa unleashed a controlled display of her powers. Shadows extended from her gown like living tendrils, twisting and blocking the attacker's path. Her movements were swift and precise, striking fear into anyone who dared approach directly. But Ethan anticipated their alternate strategies. Using his human ingenuity, he directed small groups of station personnel to create distractions, such as triggering lights, sound alarms, or even releasing harmless but startling gas clouds to disrupt the intruders' coordination. The combination of Morvessa's raw power and Ethan's clever tactics created a synergy that neither the queen nor the human had fully anticipated. The insurgents, confused and overwhelmed, faltered. Their numbers, once intimidating, became a liability. "You think too linearly," Morvessa murmured, almost to herself, as she struck down an attacker attempting to bypass the defenses. "Your human mind adapts in ways most cannot anticipate." Ethan ducked behind a console and signaled to technicians to reroute the station's gravity fields, temporarily causing the intruders to stumble. "And your queenly power," he replied, "commands attention so thoroughly that even fear can work in our favor." Together, they cornered the insurgents in a narrow corridor. Morvessa's shadow tendrils moved with lethal grace, blocking any escape. while Ethan used quick reasoning to identify weaknesses in their formation. One insurgent attempted a sudden attack from behind, but Ethan noticed and redirected him with a clever tactic, sending him tumbling harmlessly into a padded wall. Morvessa's eyes glimmered with a mixture of admiration and amusement. "You are remarkable," she said, her voice calm amid the chaos. "Few could act so decisively without power. Most would panic." Ethan shrugged lightly, though his heart raced. "Humans survive because we have to adapt. We think fast when the stakes are high." The remaining insurgents realized they were outmatched. The combination of Morvessa's power and Ethan's ingenuity was unlike anything they had expected. They surrendered, dropping their weapons, some even pleading for mercy. Morvessa's gaze swept over them, assessing threats and potential intelligence. Her judgment was swift and fair. "Leave, and do not return," she ordered. The insurgents obeyed, retreating into the depths of the station, defeated but alive. The tension in the ballroom and hallways slowly eased. Music resumed, albeit softer and more cautious, and the guests began to calm. Morvessa and Ethan stood together near the control hub, catching their breath. Around them, beings whispered their admiration. Yet Morvessa's attention was on Ethan, the human who had remained calm, clever, and unafraid. "You did well," she said, her crimson eyes studying him closely. "You see opportunities where others see only danger. That is rare." Ethan smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "And you? Command with a presence that inspires even the panic to follow." "We made a good team." Her expression softened, a rare occurrence. "Perhaps more than a good team, perhaps. Understanding one another is a power in itself." Ethan looked at her, sensing a shift. The queen who had once seemed untouchable now regarded him with respect, curiosity, and something softer, perhaps a hint of trust. It was a rare gift she offered few. "Why me?" Ethan asked quietly. "Why did you allow me to stay, to act beside you?" Morvessa considered him for a moment. "Most fear me. Some admire me. Few seek to understand me. You approach without agenda, without fear, without pretense. That is why you remain." The night had tested them both, revealing their strengths, their differences, and the unique synergy they shared. Ethan realized that humans were underestimated in many corners of the galaxy. They lacked natural weapons or extraordinary powers, but their courage, creativity, and ability to act under pressure made them formidable allies. Morvessa realized that power alone could inspire fear, but connection, trust, and mutual understanding could achieve far more. As the alarm ended and the station's systems returned to normal, guests resumed their places, cautious but in awe of what had transpired. Whispers of the alien vampire queen and the human diplomat circulated quickly. Some were shocked that a human had assisted her directly. Others speculated about what this partnership could mean for the galaxy. Ethan and Morvessa stood quietly together, watching the restored order. The human had proven that courage and quick thinking could match and sometimes surpass raw power. Morvessa had shown that leadership was more than authority. It was also strategy, decisiveness, and grace under pressure. "Tonight," Morvessa said softly, "you demonstrated what I have long suspected. Humans are unpredictable, resilient, and capable of remarkable insight. Few species could act as you did, and you," Ethan replied, "demonstrated that even beings feared across the stars can choose allies wisely. Strength is important, but trust and understanding, they are even stronger." For a moment, the chaos of the night faded, replaced by a calm that felt earned rather than given. They had faced a challenge together, survived, and formed a bond built on respect, courage, and shared purpose. It was the beginning of something neither had anticipated, a partnership born not from necessity, but from choice. As the first part of the morning passed and the station settled back into its usual rhythm, Morvessa regarded Ethan with a rare, approving smile. Perhaps the galaxy underestimates humans too often. Perhaps there is more to them than the reports suggest. Ethan chuckled lightly. And perhaps the galaxy underestimates the Queen of Shadows. Her crimson eyes glimmered. "I do not care for underestimation. I care for results tonight. We achieved them together." In that quiet moment, amidst the lingering echoes of chaos. Both of them understood that the night had changed something fundamental. The alien vampire queen had found someone who dared to see her beyond the title, and a human had discovered that courage, intellect, and understanding could hold their own even among the galaxy's most powerful beings. And so, as the Unity Station glimmered under the light of Aurelia's twin suns, a new alliance quietly formed, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. After the chaos of the previous night, Unity Station was quieter than usual. The grand halls, which had moments ago echoed with music and chatter, now felt almost serene. Attendants moved briskly to repair small damages. Security teams scanned the hallways for lingering threats, and diplomats exchanged cautious words about the near disaster. Yet amid the calm, a subtle energy lingered: curiosity, admiration, and respect, directed not just at the alien vampire queen, Morvessa, but also at the human who had stood beside her. Ethan, the ballroom, now cleared for inspections, reflected the soft morning light streaming from the station's windows. Crystalline chandeliers cast long, delicate shadows across the polished floor. Beings who had once avoided Morvessa now paused to glance her way, whispering amongst themselves. The queen, perched on her platform, observed it all silently. Her crimson eyes were sharp, assessing, but there was a softness in her expression that few had ever seen. Ethan approached carefully, carrying a small datapad he had been using to coordinate station repairs. Despite the fear and awe surrounding Morvessa, he did not bow excessively, nor did he act intimidated. He simply moved with quiet confidence, acknowledging the queen as an equal in this shared experience. "You have gathered attention," he said lightly, nodding toward the groups that whispered in her presence. Morvessa's eyes followed his gesture, then returned to him. "Yes," she said softly, "attention is easy. Respect, harder to earn. And yet, I sense something unusual tonight. Curiosity does not stem from fear." Ethan smiled. "Humans notice things others ignore, and they value actions over appearances. They saw what you did, and what we did together. That speaks louder than any fear." She studied him, intrigued. "And yet, you, a human, have changed their perception as well. It is unusual. Humans were often underestimated, and that underestimation was exactly what Morvessa found interesting. They lacked the physical prowess or innate abilities of other species, yet they compensated with cleverness, intuition, and courage. Ethan had demonstrated all of these during the breach, thinking quickly and acting decisively in ways most powerful beings could not anticipate. "I suppose humans are often surprising," Ethan said. "We survive by noticing what others overlook. We act when others hesitate. And sometimes, we succeed because we refuse to back down." Morvessa's gaze softened further, her posture relaxing just enough to indicate approval. "You are correct. And tonight, you demonstrated this clearly. Few beings possess such courage under pressure." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the station's council representatives. A group of tall, shimmering figures approached, their features elegant and alien, yet their expressions reflected respect rather than fear. They bowed slightly to Morvessa before glancing at Ethan. "Queen Morvessa," one of the representatives began, her voice melodic and precise, "your actions during the breach have been exemplary. And your companion, the human, demonstrated remarkable insight and bravery. It seems your alliance was fortuitous." Ethan inclined his head politely. "I only acted to help maintain order. The Queen's leadership made it possible." Morvessa's eyes gleamed faintly. "Indeed, without coordination and trust, even the strongest alone cannot succeed." He proved this. The representatives exchanged nods. It is rare to see a human act with such decisiveness among the galaxy's most powerful. Your people, though new to interstellar politics, may be more capable than many expect. Ethan felt a subtle surge of pride. Humans were often underestimated, treated as small players among ancient and advanced species. Yet here, in this pivotal moment, the galaxy had witnessed what courage, observation, and ingenuity could achieve. Morvessa inclined her head slightly. "Let it be known that human contributions, when guided by reason and courage, are valued. This is not common practice, but it is. Just, the representatives bowed again, acknowledging the statement. We will ensure it is recorded. Your partnership demonstrates the potential for unity and understanding beyond the expected norms. Once they departed, Morvessa looked at Ethan, her crimson eyes meeting his. They respect you, yet I suspect they do not fully understand you. They rarely understand humans in their entirety, and yet, tonight they witnessed truth. Ethan shrugged, a small smile on his face. I do not mind. Humans are used to being underestimated, and I've learned that true strength comes not from recognition, but from action. Morvessa regarded him silently for a long moment. She found herself thinking not of his actions alone, but of the qualities that made those actions possible: courage, empathy, and an unwavering willingness to face uncertainty. It was rare to encounter such traits among the galaxy's leaders. You understand, she said finally, her voice quiet but deliberate, that recognition is not the goal. Influence, courage, and loyalty. These define one's true impact. Few beings grasp this. Fewer still act upon it, and yet, Ethan replied, you did. You acted not just with power, but with foresight. You guided, not controlled. That's why the outcome was successful. A small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Morvessa's lips. Few had ever spoken so plainly to her without flattery, fear, or hidden motives. Ethan's words, simple and honest, were refreshing in a way she did not expect. The calm of the morning was briefly broken by a new alert, this time less urgent, more procedural. Morvessa glanced at the readouts and saw minor anomalies in the station's defense grid, likely residual effects of the previous night's breach. She moved gracefully toward the control hub, motioning for Ethan to follow. Come, she said. There's more to ensure the station remains secure, and I trust your perspective will be valuable. Ethan followed willingly. Despite the tension, he felt a sense of belonging in this partnership. Humans were often outsiders in interstellar politics, yet here he had found a role where observation, reasoning, and courage mattered as much as any innate power. Together, they moved through the corridors, coordinating with station personnel to stabilize defenses and repair minor damages. Morvessa's efficiency was unmatched, her commands precise and respected. Yet she allowed Ethan to contribute, to make suggestions and adjustments, treating him not as a subordinate but as a partner. You have an interesting approach, Morvessa remarked as they adjusted energy flows in a damaged sector. Your reasoning is unconventional, yet effective. Ethan smiled. Sometimes you have to think differently to solve problems. Power is one thing, but strategy requires observation and flexibility. Humans excel in flexibility, Morvessa said softly. It is rare among more rigid species. Perhaps this is why you survived centuries of underestimation. They paused briefly at a control console, monitoring the station's restored systems. For a moment, silence reigned, but it was comfortable as shared acknowledgement of trust and mutual respect. You act without fear, Morvessa said finally, her crimson eyes studying him intently. Yet not recklessly, that is rare, and you, Ethan replied, lead without domination. You command, but you also trust those who follow. That balance, it is what allowed us to succeed together. A faint nod passed between them, an unspoken understanding forming. Recognition from the station's council and the gratitude of the guests were valuable, but it was the respect they earned from each other that mattered most. The human had proven himself capable beside the queen, and she had demonstrated leadership that inspired not just fear, but trust. Stopped by mid-morning. The station was fully operational again. Guests returned to their duties. Whispers of the partnership between Morvessa and Ethan spreading throughout Unity Station. The story of the breach, the teamwork, and the courage of both beings had already begun to circulate among diplomats and warriors. Morvessa returned to her elevated platform in the main hall, observing the orderly bustle. Ethan remained nearby, quietly assisting where needed. Neither needed to speak to maintain their connection. Their mutual respect was evident in every glance and gesture. Finally, Morvessa spoke, her voice low and deliberate. Tonight, and in the days that follow. Remember this, true power lies not in fear alone, nor in strength alone. It lies in courage, in wisdom, and in the ability to see value where others do not. Ethan nodded. And humans will continue to rise, quietly, in ways that may surprise the galaxy. For the first time, Morvessa allowed herself a genuine smile. Perhaps they will, and perhaps this is only the beginning of what we might accomplish together in the quiet aftermath of crisis. The Queen and the human diplomat had not only ensured the safety of the station, but had demonstrated something far more significant, that courage, respect, and understanding could bridge the gap between species, forging alliances stronger than fear, stronger than power, stronger than expectation. The galaxy had witnessed their actions, and though whispers of admiration spread among the guests, the bond that mattered most, the bond of trust and mutual respect between Morvessa and Ethan, remained their own, quietly growing, silently promising challenges and victories yet to come. And for both, the knowledge that they had earned each other's respect was a more powerful reward than any recognition from the stars. Unity Station had returned to its usual rhythm. The hallways were alive with activity, attendants moving gracefully, diplomats negotiating quietly, and security teams performing routine checks. The events of the previous night, the breach, the chaos, and the unexpected teamwork had already become the talk of the station. Yet amid the routine, one presence drew more attention than any other, the alien vampire queen. Morvessa, seated atop her platform, and beside her, the human diplomat. Ethan, for the first time in centuries, Morvessa was not simply feared or respected from a distance. She was acknowledged, truly recognized, for her leadership, strategy, and wisdom. And she had chosen to share that recognition with another, someone who had earned it through courage, insight, and trust. Ethan stood by her side, his posture relaxed but attentive. He had learned to read subtle cues from aliens and humans alike, and tonight, every gesture and glance carried meaning. He could see that the Queen was observing the crowd, noting reactions, analyzing whispers, and yet, occasionally, her gaze flicked to him, not with suspicion, not with judgment, but with approval. Humans are often underestimated, she said quietly, her voice soft yet clear, audible only to him. I've noticed, Ethan replied with a small smile. But that's part of our advantage. We think in ways others do not expect. We adapt, we act, and sometimes we succeed because we refuse to back down. Morvessa's crimson eyes gleamed faintly, reflecting both amusement and intrigue. Perhaps that is why I have observed your species with curiosity. You are not the strongest, yet your impact can be greater than many of those who rely solely on power. Ethan glanced at her, noting the subtle softness in her expression. And you, Morvessa, are more than your title. You lead, yes, but you also inspire. That combination, it is rare. A gentle silence passed between them, a moment of mutual recognition that neither words nor actions could fully describe. They had faced danger together, acted decisively, and earned respect not through intimidation or fear, but through courage, intelligence, and trust. The calm was soon interrupted by the station's council representatives. They approached with careful steps, their expressions a mix of awe and formal respect. Queen Morvessa, one of the representatives, began, her voice melodic and precise. Your leadership and the humans' cooperation have been remarkable. The station, and indeed the galaxy, owes much to your actions. Ethan inclined his head respectfully. I acted because it was necessary. The Queen's guidance made it possible. Morvessa's gaze met his briefly. Indeed, alone, we are limited. Together, our strengths are amplified. This is what they witnessed. The representatives nodded, exchanging glances. Such cooperation between species, especially high-stakes situations, is rare. Your partnership demonstrates the potential for alliances that transcend fear, tradition, and expectation. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Humans were often underestimated, yet here, the galaxy had seen what courage, creativity, and observation could achieve. Morvessa, too, recognized that power alone could command respect, but trust, strategy, and understanding built something far stronger. As the representatives departed, leaving whispers of admiration in their wake, Morvesa turned to Ethan. "The galaxy will speak of this night for some time," she said softly. "But more important, what will you do with what they have seen?" Ethan considered the question. "I will continue to act with courage, to think creatively, and to earn trust. Recognition is not the goal, impact is. And I hope to continue working with you, Queen, to protect and strengthen alliances." Her eyes reflected faint amusement. "Impact without arrogance. That is rare. I see potential in you, human, and perhaps potential in us together." For a moment, the noise of the station seemed to fade. The Queen and the human diplomat stood quietly, the bond between them stronger than any title or reputation. They had faced danger, acted decisively, and earned trust not by force, but through courage, intelligence, and mutual respect. The rest of the day passed with more formal ceremonies. Delegates offered congratulations, and Morvesa received tributes not only as a queen but as a leader who had guided her people through peril. Ethan, though human and relatively new to interstellar politics, was acknowledged for his crucial role in the defense and strategy. The two of them moved together through the ceremonies, a quiet partnership evident in their synchronized actions and mutual understanding. During a moment of respite, Morvesa led Ethan to the observation deck of the station. The view stretched across the glittering expanse of space, distant stars twinkling against the black canvas, planets rotating in silent harmony, and nebulae glowing faintly in the distance. "Look at this," Morvesa said softly. "So vast, so full of possibilities, and yet, even here, the smallest action can have great impact. Even the choices of one being can ripple across the galaxy." Ethan nodded, taking in the sight. "And sometimes, unlikely partnerships create the strongest ripples. Humans may be small, and some species may be ancient, but courage and trust, they can change everything." Morvesa regarded him, her gaze thoughtful. "You understand the importance of choice. Few beings do. Most act out of fear, duty, or ambition. You act deliberately, and for that, you are remarkable." He smiled. "And you, Morvesa, are not only powerful, but wise. You inspire trust, not just fear. That is why we succeeded together." A gentle silence followed, the kind that carries both comfort and anticipation. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of dangers, opportunities, and possibilities. But for the first time, Morvesa felt that she was not alone in facing it. She had found someone who not only understood her, but complemented her abilities. Someone whose courage and insight matched her own power and strategy. As the day gave way to night, the station's lights twinkled like distant stars. Diplomats returned to their duties, and warriors resumed training exercises. But Morvesa and Ethan remained on the observation deck, quietly discussing strategy, sharing perspectives, and observing the universe. "Humans are often underestimated," she said thoughtfully, her crimson eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Yet you possess qualities others overlook: courage, ingenuity, and an unshakable willingness to act when necessary." Ethan chuckled softly. "And you, Morvesa, lead not just with power, but with understanding. Most beings fear what they cannot control, but you inspire what they cannot ignore." Their words carried truth, but more importantly, their actions had proven it. They had faced chaos together, acted decisively, and earned respect. The galaxy had witnessed their partnership, and now they could continue to shape alliances, protect the vulnerable, and demonstrate that courage and trust could triumph over fear and expectation. The night continued, quiet but filled with promise. Morvesa and Ethan stood side by side, gazing at the distant stars. The past trials had forged a bond stronger than any title or reputation. They understood each other's strengths, respected each other's judgments, and shared a vision of cooperation and unity that many species could only dream of. "You have earned my trust," Morvesa said finally, her voice soft but certain. "And I offer you partnership, not out of necessity, not out of obligation, but choice." Ethan felt a quiet pride. And I accept, not as a subordinate, nor as a servant, but as an equal. Together, we can face whatever the galaxy holds. Her crimson eyes reflected a rare warmth. And for the first time in centuries, Morvessa felt a profound sense of connection. She was no longer alone, feared or admired from a distance. She had chosen her companion, and in that choice lay a new strength, one built not on fear or power alone, but on trust, courage, and mutual respect. The galaxy beyond Unity Station remained vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. Yet for the Queen of Shadows and the human diplomat, the future was brighter than it had ever been. Together, they had proven that even the most unlikely alliances could overcome fear, adversity, and expectation. And as the stars twinkled silently above, Morvessa and Ethan knew that their partnership would not only endure, but flourish, shaping the galaxy in ways that would be remembered for generations. For the alien vampire queen who had been neglected, and the human who reached out without fear, a new era had begun, a partnership of equals, a bond forged through courage, understanding, and the quiet, unstoppable force of choice. The night ended not with fanfare, but with quiet determination. And in that determination lay the power to change worlds.